tricky topic this morning. Aren't we just better off without religion? So I'm going to pray that God will help us. So why don't I pray? Our dear Heavenly Father, some of us aren't sure about you, and so I pray now that the things that I say would be helpful. That very real question that heaps of people have, that maybe we'd be better off without things like this. Father, help us to have an answer for that. And Father, I pray you be with us, and I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. I'll never forget my 5-year school reunion. Who loves going to their school reunions? Do you have these sorts of things? Like, is there anyone out you love it? Who hates it and just won't go? Right, okay. Well, I don't know if you like I really enjoyed my 5-year. Okay, I missed my 25-year this year, so there you go. You can do the maths. You can age me now. But when you go back to school reunions, if you have them, and you get to see people, and it's like you're back at school, and everything is back to when you're 18. And so the same jokes, you relive the fun times and the good days. There was a fair bit of banter when I went back to my 5-year reunion. We're a little bit more sensible these days. But, at our school, we love to relive the sporting victories, okay? And, over the years, they got longer and longer, the sort of exaggeration of the story, right? Like from we won each year to no school scored a try against us for 6 years and this sort of stuff. If you're familiar with a boys' school culture, you'll understand how the 5-year reunion bravado was there, right? But I remember talking to one of my mates, and his favourite thing was footy. But I tell you what, there was another thing that wasn't his favourite. He said at my 5-year reunion, Luther, I miss those days at Joey's. I miss it. And we were at boarding school, so it was, really close camaraderie, right? But he said, mate, there's one thing I don't miss. I'm so glad we left that, insert expletive, religion. He says, aren't you glad that we're done with all that, right? He said it was so boring, and aren't you glad we don't have to inflict this on our own children? Now, if it was a saying back then, I would have said, hold my beer. But at that point, I'd only just become a Christian 3 years before my 5-year school reunion, and I only had one that night. And before his 7th, we had a great conversation, actually, about life and about religion and about Jesus and about everything. But I get his point, yeah? Like, you don't have to, it's quite easy to see and point to religion and to see that actually we might be better off without it. And his opinion was that we certainly would be. It used to be that you'd have to go back about 900 years, to the time of the Crusades, and people would say, look at the atrocities that happened then. In the name of Jesus and Allah, but you don't actually. There's lots of evidence right around the world at the moment. It's right in our face, the violence and the terrorism that's perpetuated by Islamic State and others, beheadings in Iraq and Syria, sieges in Paris, sieges in Sydney. Yeah, it's right in front of us, the problems, yeah? Or you can come a little bit closer to home. I mean, the big one for us in Australia, isn't this true? The Royal Commission into institutional child sexual abuse in our own country. Perpetuated at times at the hands of religion. People who own the name of Jesus. Right? There's lots of evidence, right, to point to the fact that maybe religion's the problem, and it's pretty overwhelming, and it's left people wondering whether they should bother at all, right? And some people would say more than that. Actually, religion is the number one cause of wars and conflict. And there's certainly been some writers out there that are pretty good and have certainly, the new atheists and the evangelists for that, have sort of spun a web around faiths like ours and have sort of said, the late Christopher Hitchens, he wrote a book and it was called this, God is Not Great. And the subtext was how religion poisons everything. Now, I don't know if you've heard of him. Richard Dawkins, his mate, sort of writing books about how science has really disproved Christianity. I don't think that's true, but that's another talk for another day, right? But Hitchens, he said, he set out to, most people thought Christianity and other religions were good, and that was the weight of public opinion, and he sought to sort of really skewer that and to convince us that really it spoils the lot. Now, with ideas like that out there, I'm not surprised that mates like mine would come up to people like me at our school reunion and say, gosh, aren't we just better off without this? And if you go on your Facebook feed or your kid's Facebook feed and you see for any 5 minutes, you'll see someone who says something like that. It's sort of an angsty version of John Lennon's song, Imagine. Do you remember that? I remember my school teacher teaching us to sing, I won't sing it for you, right? Right? Imagine there's no heaven. It isn't hard to do. Imagine if there's only sky. Imagine if there's no hell, nothing below us, right? And maybe we could just live at peace. That was the idea, right? Just us getting along. Maybe that's the answer. That was the dream. Now, aren't we just better off without religion? Now, obviously, you probably think that I disagree with that, and I do, right? But I want to show you a few things this morning. I want to show you why I don't think that's the case, right? But now to get at the idea of Christopher Hitchens that religion poisons everything. If you wonder about that, I just want to say, really? That it poisons everything? That's a pretty massive claim to make, because religion, if you think about it, religion, it's just a way of people thinking of how to answer the big problems or the big questions of the world. Lots of people have always organised themselves in groups to work out how they see the world. That's all religion is. So some people would say that religion as a category is the problem, right? That people organising their beliefs into a belief system is the problem. You know what the problem with that is that in that way, we're all religious. Right? Every one of us has a way of seeing the world. We're never going to get rid of religion. Now, organised religion, that's certainly had its problems. Yeah, but seeing the world in different ways will always do that. Everyone is religious. Every single person sitting in this room right now, or those of you who are under the marquee outside, good to have you guys. Sorry, hopefully COVID will end soon, right? But, friends, every one of us is religious. Every one of us has a way of seeing the world. But it's true that in the name of religion, much has occurred, okay? But does religion poison everything? Because I'd actually want to point to one religion that when it's lived well and when it's lived truthfully has actually brought a great deal of good to society, right? Right, evils have been perpetuated, definitely, but poison everything? In fact, Christianity, I want to say, is largely responsible for many great things that you see in our world. We sort of take it for granted, right? Particularly in the West. Hospitals and schools, the whole concept of modern university education, Social justice has got its roots in Christianity, the abolition of slavery, right? The roots of the civil rights movement, right? The beauty that we find in art and culture, like modern expressionist art, found its beginnings in religious art and culture. The very ethical foundations of our justice system, right? Our law and justice system is based on the scriptures. I think we've got to be really careful to say religion poisons everything as we sort of drink from the cup of the benefits of living in a society that's been shaped wonderfully by it, right? But I also want to say it's more than that. It's not just the big social structures. And have you noticed, if you're someone who's a little bit skeptical about this stuff, have you noticed the way that Christianity has shaped the way that people live? Right? Now, I want to tell you a couple of surprising ways of living that have come out of Christianity that don't make sense at first, but when you see it, it's compelling, okay? Now, none of these things make Christianity true. It's just, I want you to show where they've come from, that it's not poison. Right, the first one is, have you heard this? It's more blessed to give than receive. You've heard that, right? Yeah? In our acquisitive culture, we just love buying stuff for ourselves. It's sort of countercultural, don't you think, to suggest that as Christians that the Bible commands us to not only give to others in need, but to serve others in love, right? And the claim that it's more blessed to give than receive, Acts chapter 20, it sort of cuts against the grain of our individualized, sort of self-focused mindset. But there's actually a growing body of research that says this, that giving to others is good for us. It's good. Volunteering has a massive impact on your physical and psychological health. Actively caring for others means that you end up with greater physical and psychological benefits than if someone is caring for you. In other words, giving presents at Christmas is better than getting presents at Christmas. We know this. It's more blessed to give than receive. Now, why do Christians do that? Well, because we actually believe that the central story of the Bible is that God came into human history in Jesus, and then he gave himself to us, and then he died on a cross to take on himself the punishment for our sin, for our rebellion against him. And so it is more blessed to give than receive because that's what he did. And we follow him, and it's not surprising that the scientific data backs up that you'll be better off in life when you give more than you receive, because that's what he's like. Here's another one, that gratitude is good for us. Right? We sort of know this. Look, here's a verse from the Bible, which might seem harsh at first. It says, particularly if you've had a hard day, rejoice always, Paul says, pray without ceasing, and give thanks in all circumstances. Now that might seem unrealistic, right? Even insensitive. But you know, Paul who wrote this, he was an apostle, he was a first century church leader, and he wasn't an armchair critic, okay? He'd experienced beatings and shipwrecks and suffering and the threat of death. But you know what's fascinating, right? He could still write that. Rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances. And you know, psychologists say, you know, they've discovered that if you are consciously thankful, right, then you end up with far better outcomes in life. Like daily gratitude is actually quite literally good for you. Like they say, they did an experiment and they got people to take a journal, and those who wrote down every day the things that they're thankful for, right, did much better psychologically, physically, they exercised more, they slept better, they were happier in life than those who wrote down neutral things or negative things that were happening to them. Now, I've just given you a little bit of positive psychology, okay? But friends, gratitude, it's actually not a sort of positive psychological thing that Christians use to get through life. Gratitude is actually buried at the heart of Christianity. Because Christians believe that not only did God create us, but he gave us everything. And not only that, when Jesus died, he gave us salvation and he gave us his life. Like gratitude is at the heart of Christianity because it's a response to what Jesus has done. Christians are grateful because at the heart of our life, God has done something remarkable for us. Now, gratitude may be good for you, but it comes out of Christianity. Now, I could give you heaps more of these, right? How self-control and perseverance are good for you, or forgiveness is foundational in our relationships. That comes out of Christianity. Mate, don't we need to hear that in our cancel culture, don't you think? That forgiveness makes our relationships better? That the way that God has forgiven us makes us generously forgive other people? Like not a good friend, a person I like, okay? A sports star overnight, okay? Doesn't this happen like every day? Last week, he's 23. He made a mistake. Wasn't a great thing. He uttered a word underneath his breath when he missed a putt. Overnight, his sponsor cancelled his $10 million contract, hoping that he would learn from this horrendous thing that he had said, and that as he goes on this journey of learning, that maybe this company might be able to bring him back into the fold of their wonderfulness. Right? I then did a little bit of a search about the life of the owner of that company, and I think the word starts with H that would describe the way that they treated him. Like a society that loses the opportunity to forgive others has lost its soul. Now, Jesus, how many times does he say do we forgive? Not seven times, but 70 times, 7 times. I mean, if we've been forgiven all the things that we've done, how can we not offer that to others? Doesn't a cancel culture just need to learn a little bit more forgiveness, a little bit more grace? Yes, people need to be called out, but people need a chance, do they not? Now, the next thing that people say about this is that these are things that we would not be better off with, but could it be that it's not religion, friends, that we'd be better off without, but false religion? So the next thing to say is, you know, there's actually been attempts in history to get rid of all religion, and they have actually caused incredible violence and pain. Because I guess if you're sitting there and you're saying, how would you suppose if someone said, aren't we just better off without religion? My question would be, how do you reckon we'd do that? Like if a nation decided, just we'll do an experiment. Say if a nation like ours decided to get rid of one particular religion or to get rid of all religions, how would we do that? Friends, the only way we could do that is by force, right? And to legislate against religious belief or one particular religion and to enforce that. And how do you reckon that would go? Well, friends, as you know, that's been attempted throughout the world, throughout history, and it's happening in many parts of the world now. And friends, it's horrendous. It's technically called totalitarianism. And friends, how's that gone? Well, in Cambodia, under Pol Pot, 2.5 million people slaughtered for being religious. China under Mao, 38 million people slaughtered. Right? Communist Russia under Stalin, 43 million people slaughtered. Friends, it's just horrific. And there are totalitarian regimes today that enforce a particular religious belief and will kill those who don't hold to it. And attempts to get rid of religion have caused awful suffering. More than 100 million people in the 20th century died as various nationalistic regimes decided to try and rid people of religion. Do we really want that? It seems like you have to have a lot of blood on your hands to get rid of religion. Now, aren't we blessed to live in Australia? But shouldn't what's happening in America just be a little warning as to what could happen, right, if we start to lose the foundations of what we have? Now, I understand, so maybe that's not the solution we want. And I understand people's frustration, and I understand the real pain of those who have been hurt by religion, but to outlaw it and to enforce that would be a form of oppression that we would never want to see in a place like this. And so I guess the next thing I want to say is that when people say, aren't we just better off without religion, sort of behind that is an assumption. There's this assumption that all religions are the same. I don't know if you've heard that. Like, we should just get rid of them all, because really religions are just different ways of all thinking about the same God in the end anyway. You've heard this, right? So some describe, like all the religions, they're like rafts that are sort of going along a river. They're just going along the river together. They're all jockeying for position, all trying to get people to get out of their raft and into the other raft. But at the end of the day, they're all just rafts that are going down the river together. Now, and many people would sort of put Christianity as one of the major religions and as one of the rafts that are going down the river, all doing the same thing in the end. I want to suggest that Christianity is sort of not a raft going down the river. If that was the illustration, Christianity is actually a motorboat that is forcefully going in the exact opposite direction, because we may call Christianity a world religion, but friends, Christianity is so unique. And Jesus, the author and founder, is so unique that the last thing you want to do is to lump all of the religions in together. It really is a mistake and a bit of an insult to Muhammad and to Buddha and to Krishna and to Jesus to lump them all in together, because they profoundly disagree with each other. If all the other religions are a raft going down the river, Christianity is a motorboat going the other direction, right? I would love for you to consider the uniqueness of Christianity. Now, as an adult, you may never have done that. I did it at 19, and can I say it was profound, because I'd never actually considered the unique claims of Jesus, and that might be you, and I want you to consider it. But as we do that, can I start here? You might be surprised on this whole religious question that Jesus hates the very thing about religion that you hate. He actually agrees with us that much of the corruption that emerges from within it, and he is very critical of both the religion that Christianity emerged from and others, right? He actually speaks against the very things that disturb us. Now, I want to show you this from the Bible. So it's coming up on the screen. Here's Matthew 23. Now, Matthew, that's just one of the Gospels. That's just one of the stories of Jesus' life. And here, I want to show you two things from these passages. I want to show you how Jesus hates religious hypocrisy, especially amongst leaders. And secondly, I want to show you how he pursues love and mercy and faithfulness, particularly above a law that was corrupted at that time, right? So here's the first one, calling out religious leaders. Look what he says. He says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees." They were the religious elites. "You hypocrites. Jesus is a lot edgier than you think, right? You pay a tenth of mint and dill and cumin, that was like their donations to the temple. Yet you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice and faith and mercy. These things should have been done without neglecting the others. Right? He attacks the Jewish leaders and he says, you hypocrites, you've corrupted this good law that's been given to you. You're following the letter of the law. You're even adding your religious traditions to it. But when it comes to actually caring for people in need, friends, you've lost the heart of it. The heart of the law was mercy and justice and forgiveness. You're not caring for people, you hypocrites. Jesus constantly hates the hypocrisy of religion that he saw, and he calls it out. Have you ever seen a corrupt religious institution? Jesus did, and he called it out. How about in Matthew chapter 9? This is an example of how Jesus pursues love above everything else. The context of this is that Jesus often had dinner with people he wasn't meant to have dinner with, okay? Right? The religious law at the time said that you were meant to isolate yourselves from certain marginalised people. Jesus didn't do that. Have a look. It says, while he was reclining at the table in his house, can you picture this? Many tax collectors, they were outcasts because they ripped people off, and sinners came as guests to eat with Jesus and his disciples. I mean, Jesus would often have at his table prostitutes, those who were outcasts, marginalised, oppressed, the unclean. And then when the Pharisees, the religious leaders, saw this, they asked the disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? Why is he doing this? When Jesus heard this, he said, those who are well don't need a doctor, but the sick do. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. For I didn't come to call the righteous, but sinners. What he meant, when Jesus says he didn't come to call the righteous, he meant, I didn't come to call self-righteous people who think that they're all that. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. You can sacrifice and do as much religious duty as you like, but if you don't welcome the very people around the table that I welcome, then you have no idea about the kingdom of God, and you have no idea who I've come for. I've come to reach everyone with my mercy and compassion and forgiveness. You should know this. He calls them out. The final one he calls them out, I want to show you this one. I don't know if you've ever heard of this concept of the Sabbath. You heard this? It's like a religious idea that you're meant to keep a day aside to remember that God made everything and that we're to rest in him and his provision. And on the Sabbath, okay, there was this rule that had grown up that you weren't meant to do any work. In fact, the religious leaders said there's only a certain amount of steps you could take, and they were very concerned about it. This is what happened. Jesus was there. Moving on from there, he entered into their synagogue. It was like a church. And there was a man there who had a paralyzed hand. Could you imagine that? And in order to accuse him, so they always wanted to try and trap Jesus, they asked him, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? They're just trying to catch him out. But he said to them, what man among you, he always knew what to say, Jesus, what man among you, if he had a sheep that fell into a pit on the Sabbath, wouldn't take hold of it and lift it out? A man is worth far more than sheep. So is it lawful to do what is good on the Sabbath? Then he told the man, stretch out your hand. So he stretched it out, and it was restored, as good as the other. But the Pharisees went out and plotted against him how they might destroy him. Friends, as soon as you plot to kill the guy who heals someone who is paralyzed on his day off, I think you've lost the plot. Right? This is religious hypocrisy peaking. And Jesus calls it out again. Right? If your sheep was in the ditch, you'd pull it out, wouldn't you? And yet you want to trap me when I've changed this whole man's life? And isn't this what religion always does? It sets up rules around it so you miss its heart. And so if you see religious hypocrisy and you think that's not consistent with the religion that that person preaches, then know that Jesus is upset about it as you are. He hates what we hate about religion. Now, one final example, okay? This is in John's Gospel, and it's sort of currently like a current example. You know, this is awful, right? You know the terrorist groups these days, how when they do something horrendous, they often video it and they put it on Facebook. So if you were to go to Saudi Arabia today and a woman is caught in adultery, chances are she'll be brought out into the public square and a group of people will have a bunch of stones and they'll either stone her to death or she might be beheaded. Now that's abhorrent. And Jesus, he finds himself in this very situation when there's a woman about to be executed in the Gospels and men are gathered around with stones about to execute her for adultery. And look what happens. Jesus stooped down and he started writing on the ground with his finger. I wonder what he wrote. Hypocrites? And when they persisted in questioning him, he stood up and he said to them, okay, the one without sin among you should be the first to throw a stone at her. Now, I have to be straight up. That last bit, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. You know what's something really disappointing? That shouldn't be in the Bible. It's a long story why that shouldn't be in the Bible, but the reason that shouldn't be in the Bible is because there's really not great evidence that John, who wrote that gospel, wrote that down. But here's why it's in there. I think so many people who were there heard Jesus say that the person who scribed that down just decided to add it back in like John had made a mistake. But let's say Jesus did say that, but we'll keep going. What happened next? He then stooped down again and continued writing on the ground. Maybe he was like, I'll give them time. And when they heard this, that he was without sin cast the first stone, they left one by one, starting with the older men. Only he was left. Maybe they considered their own life. And the woman was at the center. When Jesus stood up, he said to her, woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you? No one, Lord, she answered. Neither do I condemn you, Jesus said. Go and now turn. Now go, and from now on, do not sin anymore. Friends, that is wonderful compassion and mercy, isn't it? Like, it's not that Jesus was unconcerned about sin. He says to the woman, go and sin no more. Like, go and be faithful to your husband. But friends, he chooses to show incredible mercy and compassion and forgiveness. And he is horrified by those who would champion judgment over mercy. He condemns the wickedness of religion when he sees it. And the reason why I wanted to take you to those passages is that I just wanted you to see that Jesus calls out religious hypocrisy as much as we are. And so when we consider that we might be better off without him, I just want you to think about that. But you might be with me. You might say, look, it's totally unrealistic to get rid of all religion, but then you might drift towards the next option, okay, which is this. Let's just get rid of the problem parts of religion. Have you thought about this? Let's get rid of extremism, radicalism, or fundamentalism. I'm sure you've heard this. Yeah? Let me explain what they mean. The media sort of has different meanings for that, but extremism is just those who have really strong convictions about their own beliefs. Right? Radicalism is just a hardline version of religion. Fundamentalism is just effectively those who believe in the fundamentals of their particular religion. But those words have come to be associated with radical terrorism, have they not? But many people suggest that that type of religion is the problem, right? Because it's that type of religion that causes division and unrest, and people are polarized and they get aggressive. And so what we need to rule out is extremism. We need to get rid of absolutism. We need to get rid of any group that says that they have a mortgage on the truth, that absolute truth belongs to them. The people who say that there's right and wrong, the people who say that there's in and out, there's people who say that there's true religion and false religion. But can I say that absolutism, absolute truth breeds unrest? Here's the thing. What they're saying is, the solution is to the problems of religion, let's just embrace getting along with each other and make that a higher thing than pursuing the truth. Let's care less about truth and more about getting along with each other. Can I say that that sounds heaps appealing? Does that sound appealing? Let's care less about truth and more about just getting along with each other. Do you know the problem with that? Does it work? What would it look like if we really lived like it was more important to just get along than to actually deal with things like truth? Wouldn't it mean for religions they'd be sort of stripped of all their substance and they'd end up really moderate and tolerant and caring and inclusive and accepting of all different ideas about the way to get to God. It's called pluralism, and it sounds fantastic, and you can believe whatever it is that you want to believe. But friends, what would that mean for a generation if we raise them that way? Now I'm going to sound like a grumpy old man, but I've got an almost 15-year-old, so I think I can sort of go in this direction, right? What happens if we raise our kids without the concept of truth? What happens if we do that? You know those values that were there before, right, that came out of the scriptures, justice and truth and loyalty. We'd have a generation, right, where pluralism reigns, where everything is okay, and where the conscience of our society is lost, where you don't have a concept of right and wrong, and even a sense of justice. Does that sound familiar? I reckon Australia has been doing that experiment for the last 30 years, yeah? And the recent evidence is that things are heading south, and they're heading south quick. And if a society like the United States can start losing this sense of actually wanting to know truth, that is, not listening to each other, and that's what's caused the division. The abandonment of the idea of truth and justice and mercy and conversation. That's the problem of what has been going on over there. Could you imagine if the authorities in our land operated like that, if we abandoned the idea of truth? What would our politicians be doing? They'd be saying things like, well, they'd be making suggestions, and then they'd be breaking their promises, and then they'd be saying, well, that wasn't popular now, so maybe I should do this. Oh, actually, isn't this the sort of way that we're pushing them in? I don't think that's the sort of leaders that we want. Isn't that true? We don't want a society that gives up on truth and justice and loyalty. I don't think we want to live in a society that gives up on truth. Because, friends, we can actually go searching for the truth about life and everything in Jesus, and we can do it peacefully. Do you notice what? And I want to give you Jesus' solution to this question. Aren't we better off without religion? What does he offer? Jesus' solution is really unique, okay? Because on the one hand, friends, he totally agrees with us. He hates corrupted religion, but you know what he offers is he doesn't decide to give up on the whole idea of truth. He actually says, no, there is an absolute truth, and it's found in me. So he condemns the evils of religion, and then he affirms truth, and then he says absolute claims about himself. Look what he says. Jesus told him, when someone asked the way to heaven, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Friends, that is radical. That is uncompromising. It doesn't leave any room to differ, right? The truth is me, he says. He says, I'm the only way to God. And if you want to come to God, you need to come to God through me. And friends, genuine Christianity has always peacefully asked anyone to just consider, is that true? There's no force. There's no coercion. Jesus just says, come to me and test out if that statement is true. Did I exist? Did I really heal people? Did I really rise from the dead? And if he did, then no one needs to be coerced. No one needs to be forced to do anything. In love, Christians just persuade others that there is a truth about life and about the future and about everything else, and it's found in Jesus. We can get along if we peacefully seek out the truth. Now, you might be going, I'm not so sure. I think I'm better off without Jesus. That's okay. I just want to invite you to come and see. Come and test it out. Start a conversation. Why don't I pray? Let's pray. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for Jesus, that he didn't abandon the whole idea of truth, and that he didn't abandon us. Then in love he came into the world to reveal you. And Father, I pray that within Christianity, within other religions, that you would show us the hypocrisy that's there, then in love you would help us to call it out, that you would help us to hate the things that you hate. But at the same time, Father, that because of that, we wouldn't give up on the whole idea of you, that we wouldn't give up the quest of finding out the answers to the big questions that we have. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.